Let's dive into today's chapter, which is Daenerys IV, or otherwise known as Daenerys 4 of A Storm of Swords. Daenerys and her army of Unsullied reach Yunkai to find the city guarded by a huge force, including 2 sellsword companies. She knows that open battle will cost her many lives, even though her commanders feel she will win easily. Daenerys tells her men to invite the 2 sellsword captains, as well as the Yunkish leader. The first to arrive are the 3 captains of the Stormcrows, who spurn and offer to join her, although she notices Dario Naharis smile at her as they leave. The captain of the Second Sons also laughs at her offer, but does accept a wagon load of wine to bring to his men. The master slaver brings Daenerys chest full of gold, hoping she will leave Yunkai alone. But she sends him off with his gold and a warning that she will attack in 3 days' time. After he leaves, Daenerys tells her commanders that they will attack that night, since none of Yunkai's defenders will be expecting it. Soon after, Dario returns with the head of the other 2 Stormco captains and swears the service of his company. Jorah warns her not to trust the Tyroshi, yet she commands the battle to commence as planned. During the fight, she asks Arstan, otherwise known as Barristan Selmy, to tell her more of her brother Rhaegar. Whitebeard explains that the prince was always melancholy and seemed to have a sense of doom hung over him. He was born in grief, and that shadow hung over him all his days. Daenerys knows that it was the shadow of Summerhall that Whitebeard was referring to. Word arrives that her army won the battle easily during the night with the help of the Stormcrows, and all of the Second Sons too drunk to fight. Daenerys commands her men to spare any who threw down their swords and promise to free any slaves. Once again, Daenerys' army swells to even greater size. Daenerys rides on her white mare past all of the new freed people who call out to her as mother.
Big chapter.
Yeah, big chapter. There is a lot to unpack in this, and this is one of the I don't want to shift the whole chapter ideology from Daenerys to Rhaegar, but this is one of the most important Rhaegar chapters, because this is where we definitely get a lot of his backstory as well. But I kind of want to talk a little bit about Jimmy. I think one of the characters, and this is one that's really kind of misinterpreted, I think, quite a bit in the show, especially since the character was recast, and that is Dario Naharis, and what Dario actually means for Daenerys, and what we think Dario will be going forward. Because a lot of people have theorized that Dario will have a more important role to play in Winds of Winter, or that Dario might end up being the same, and it's just going to be something that Daenerys gives up in order to go back, which is actually kind of where I sit on the Dario camp. I think Dario's storyline will probably be likely similar, that he'll just get left in Essos. I don't know if he'll die in battle or something. I think it is more important for Daenerys to have to kind of fall in love with him and leave him there as a piece that she's giving up in order to make it over to Westeros, especially if we do go down a Daenerys Jon storyline, and then that way it's something that they both had to overcome in order to get together, with Jon losing Ygritte, which we're also coming up on, pretty similarly, and that they're both going to have this sort of similar past. So I think that's where I'm kind of at in the Dario camp, but I just want your thoughts quick on him as a character and what you kind of think about him.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I think what he represents was probably represented fairly well in the show. I mean, there's certainly differences, but I do think that Dario serves Daenerys' character arc mostly, and I don't think that he will accompany us to Westeros and King's Landing. I don't think so. And one does kind of wonder if we are to see a Daenerys. I'm a big believer, not so much that Daenerys would go mad. I'm willing to hear that and people's ideas about it. But lately I've been more on the camp of she will have kind of a righteous sacrifice and be underrepresented in history for her sacrifice, especially if young Griff's sitting on the throne. Basically she will die protecting Westeros, even if they did not accept her as mother, which she is getting in this chapter, right? She's mother. She might never be mother to Westeros. And I think that the Dario piece of the story, and when we start, let's just say that Daenerys has a heroic end and a sacrificial end. We would look back at what she did give up and see it as a tragedy. We would see it as a tragedy because people are not giving her the due that she's deserved. So I think that it is very fitting for Dario to be left behind and kind of just serve that purpose for the story. Plus, like, we do have to wrap this thing up, and there's only so many people that we can give fitting endings to. So I don't think that Dario necessarily has to have like this big character arc where he's in Westeros and he's changing the way he feels about Daenerys and he's maybe bitter that she's being praised by all the, you know what I mean? Like none of that. I don't think it's that compelling to keep him post Essos. So though George is talented enough that he could make it compelling, but I think he will probably be left behind. I do believe that Jon and Daenerys are not going to be romantic. I just have this feeling that that's not going to
It's just
happen.
not going to be the case.
Yeah, from what I've read and seen is that Jon Daenerys was largely a D&D invention, and they knew in like season 4 or 5 that they wanted Jon to kill Dany at the end. That's what I remember reading. And when George gave them the big points, like the oh shit moments, I think is what he called them. Uh, Daenerys being murdered by Jon wasn't one of them. And I feel like that would have been one of them, like from George. So I don't think George necessarily intends to go down a path. In fact, this is probably not what people would love to hear. I don't know if it's entirely impossible that Jon doesn't end up with Sansa or somebody because he's a cousin. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of incestuous stuff going on.
Right. Yeah. Well, Jon and Dany in theory would be with his aunt. So I mean,
right.
Yeah,
so it's really,
I
and all of it's weird. So let's just get that out of the way. But I really wouldn't be surprised if we ended up with something like that, possibly because in the original outline of Game of Thrones, Jon and Arya are supposed to be together.
Right.
Which is, in the end, is very strange. But I don't necessarily know if he'll end up with Arya per se. But I think his romantic options, I do think romance will be a piece of Jon's arc and Daenerys's, but I actually don't think they'll be each other's. But I could be wrong.
Yeah, I don't know about it. I want to pull this up here real quick because it ties into what you're saying, and it also kind of takes me down a slightly different path here. Is when she's talking and she's got the dragons around her, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I pulled up here. So Daenerys, I am thrice your age, says Jorah. I have seen how false men are. Very few are worthy to trust, and Dario Naharis is not one of them. Even his beard wears false colors. That angered her. Whilst you have been an honest beard, is that what you? Whilst you have an honest beard, is that what you're telling me? You are the only man I should ever trust. He stiffened. I didn't say that. You say it every day. Pyat Pre's a liar. Zaro's a schemer. Belwast. A baggart, artisan, an assassin. Do you think I'm still some virgin girl? Then I cannot hear the words behind the words. Your Grace, she bullied over him. You have been a better friend to me than any I have known, a better brother than Viserys ever was. You are the first of my Queen's Guard, the commander of my army, my most valued counselor, my good right hand. I honor and respect and cherish you, but I do not desire you, Jorah Mormont, and I am weary of you trying to push every other man in the world away from me. So I must needs rely on you and you alone. It will not serve, and it will not make you love me any better. Mormont had flushed red when she first began, but by the time Dany was done, his face was pale again. He stood still as stone. If my queen commands, he said, curt and cold. Dany was warm enough for both of them. She does, she said. She commands. Now go see your Unsullied, sir. You have a battle to fight and win. So that's part of the whole thing is her like pushing away Jorah because Jorah is trying to do this, but Jorah is there telling her, hey, Pirate Pre's a liar. Zara is a schemer. Belwast is like, all of these people are liars. Then Dany starts to think about some things as she's with her dragons, right? When he was gone, Dany threw herself down on her pillow beside her dragons. She had not been to be so sharp with Jorah, but his endless suspicion had finally woken her dragon. He will forgive us, she told herself. He will forgive me. I am his liege. Dany found herself wondering whether he was right about Dario. She felt very lonely all of a sudden. Miriam Mazder had promised that she would never bear a living child. House Targaryen will end with me. That made her sad. You must be my children, she told the dragons. My 3 fierce children. Arson says dragons live longer than men, so you will go on after I am dead. So I think, like you had mentioned, the possibility of Dany and Jon not getting together. I mean, it's possible that they may never even meet each other.
That
right?
could
I mean,
happen, actually.
that
Yeah.
could happen. We still don't know,
Good.
there's still a lot of moving pieces and Winds of Winter yet to come out and stuff like that. But I think so often we look at prophecies, and we'll go back to the Rhaegar stuff here in a minute about this, and we look at a lot of these prophecies almost as if they're true, right? Like Melisandre,
Right.
Salt
Yeah.
and Smoke, Azor Ahai, all of these things, and we look at that as like, oh, when you must Quaithe, we view as almost like everything Quaithe says is right. Mira Mazder, on the other hand, we kind of view as like, well, she is a liar, right?
Right. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
she is a liar, but what's to say she's not? Right, and that the other people aren't correct, right? I mean, Melisandre says all this stuff about Stannis that isn't correct. So
Oh, absolutely.
like what I mean. So it's just, it seems like sometimes we kind of pick and choose the prophecies that we like and things like that. But like
Mhm.
very much, Dany might never have children. House Targaryen might end with her.
I
Right,
think.
John could be a Dane if you want to go down to to
Oh
that.
my God. Oh
I'm
no.
just I'm just saying, like the possibility. There's certainly like that's not the craziest theory out there in a Song of Ice and Fire. There's certainly some credence to it.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's just kind of interesting. I think sometimes we look at like the prophecies of this person and this person, and we kind of say yes, 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 and no, and then kind of no to Mira Mazder. But maybe Mira Mazder is more correct than Melisandre or Quaithe
Or partly correct.
or whoever. Yeah,
Maybe she can't get pregnant, but the House Targaryen does die with her because
yeah,
John also. But also, I think so. When I hear that, my feeling is George is playing with us a little bit to keep us off the trail of John being a Targaryen. Like Daenerys may die, but House Targaryen lives on through John. Like,
right. He
and
can't say
that's the
that.
idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that there's that.
Because
I think
nobody, Mira Mazzer doesn't even know who it is. Obviously none of these people would know. Yeah.
to everyone in the world, there is now one Targaryen left, and her name is Daenerys. When in reality, we know there's one over in Westeros too. So
There's two in Westeros right now.
yeah. Oh, true. Aemon.
Aemon is still alive. Yeah.
Yeah.
But a lot
He'll
of
be
people,
dead. He'll be dead eventually, but yeah.
yeah. But a lot of people, obviously, don't know that he's there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna pull up the stuff about Rhaegar here. I didn't highlight it, unfortunately, so I just have to kind of find it here when they're talking about him. But yeah, I agree. Yeah, obviously George can't sort of say, oh, hey, well, secretly he's a Targaryen, but I'm just saying maybe House Targaryen will end with her because maybe Jon Snow is. If a lot of, I mean, we don't know how many people will end up finding out about who he is.
There's so much I like
Like
about all
even in
that, though.
even I know, but even in the show, like how many people really ended up knowing that John was a Targaryen?
Well, I would
Not that
say that
many.
that was one of the balls that they dropped. I would say that that
You
should have
think you
mattered a
think
lot
you
more.
think you think way more people like I mean even that
Should have
is
just
something.
mattered more. It didn't really matter at the end of the day, right? Like it was.
Yeah, I mean, but do you think more people will know?
Yeah, I do think so. I think it'll be a massive revelation, at least to the to the players. I think that I mean, I don't want to harp on the show too much because we're talking about these amazing books, but the fact that they cut out the scene where John's family finds out is like the craziest. Like for a show that was built around these massive conversations, dramatic conversations, like those dialogue scenes. Some of them are like Tyrion's trial. It's literally one of the best, or Jamie and Tyrion in the dungeon where they definitely made the wrong decision. Um, I just it's still crazy to me they cut it. Yeah, but I think a lot more people would know. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I got the Rhaegar stuff pulled up here. Let me pull
The echo that is Rhaegar throughout the whole series.
Oh yeah. So Daenerys asked Whitebeard to bring it up. Right. It was again Barristan Selmy, and Barristan I think certainly has his own opinions about
Mhm.
Rhaegar. Right. Seems he's certainly said a lot of things. So Prince Rhaegar's prowess was unquestioned, but he seldom entered the list. He never longed the Song of Swords the way that Robert did or Jaime Lannister. It was something he had to do, a task that the world had set him. He did it well, and he did everything well. That was his nature, but he took no joy in it. Men said that he loved his harp better than the lance. He won some tourneys, surely, said Danny, disappointed. When he was young, his grace rode brilliantly in a tourney at Storm's End, defeating Lord Stefan Baratheon, Jason Mallister, the Red Viper of Dorne, and a mystery knight who proved to be the infamous Simon Toyne, chief of the Kingswood Outlaws. He broke 12 lances against Sir Arthur Dane that day. Was he champion? No, your grace. That honor went to another knight of the Kingsguard who unhorsed Prince Rhaegar in the final tilt. Danny did not want to hear about Rhaegar being unhorsed. But what tourney did my brother win? Your grace. He won the greatest tourney of them all. And then he goes into Harrenhal, right?
Mm-hmm.
But first of all, I love the little bit of like, well, it was another. That's a smart move by Barristan to not say, well, me, you know.
But as a reader, you know, the signs are there.
It was somebody else, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I like that the signs are there as the reader to maybe make some connections. I love it.
So he goes on. The tourney Lord went, stays at Harrenhal behind the God's Eye in the year of the False Spring, a notable event. Besides the jousting, there was a melee in the old style fought between 7 teams of knights, as well as archery and axe throwing, a horse race, a tournament of singers, mummer show, and many feasts and frolics. Lord Went was an open-handed as he was rich. The lavish purses he proclaimed drew hundreds of challengers. Even your royal father came to Harrenhal when he had not left the Red Keep for long years. The greatest lords and mightiest champions of the 7 kingdoms rode in that tournament, and the Prince of Dragonstone bested them all. But was that the tourney where he crowned Lyanna Stark as his queen of love and beauty? Princess Elia was there, his wife, and yet my brother gave the crown to a Stark girl and later stole her away from her betrothed. How could he do that? Did the Dornish woman treat him so ill? It was not for such as me to say what might have been in your brother's heart, your grace. The Princess Elia was a good and gracious lady, though her health was ever delicate. Yeah.
Yeah, now we're reading this and talking about Lyanna Stark and like Jon and Daenerys not meeting. I think they have to meet. I think obviously the Song of Ice and Fire, a lot of people point to that. Some people think it's only about Jon too. But yeah, I think they got to meet, especially her. Like they're dancing so close to the truth, right? It's so much there. Obviously, they don't have all the context, so they can't figure it out. But again, as a reader in a Daenerys POV, we start thinking about what you just said, Matt. Like, this is the beauty of the series. It's like we're told things just like we are told things every day about history that may or may not be true. I mean, a lot of it is, but sometimes it's just a perspective change, just a little perspective change, and all of history changes. And the idea that Rhaegar kidnapped Lyanna and did what he did to, you know what I mean? And in reality, that's probably not going to be the case, I would assume. And it's just so much fun because when you're a reader, a lot of times we just nod along, but if you're being perceptive, if you're questioning the narrative, like there's so much opportunity for doubt and speculation, which is why the series is so much fun to have a podcast about, because that's all we do.
Absolutely.
But this passage is a prime example. And I read a lot of fantasy, like a lot of fantasy. If I couldn't tell you how many authors would not have the trust in their readers to connect dots and start giving you obvious signs that like more, I mean, I would say on a reread, it's fairly obvious, but I'm talking about like little things, like for instance, Daenerys being like the last target, it'll die with you. And it's like, unless there is another, like they signified to the reader, hey, you should start thinking about this. George just doesn't do those things.
Mm-hmm.
And he trusts his reader, and it provides us with an opportunity to really dive in to the text and to see what else we should be questioning. And I love it. I love it so much. It's so good.
Well, hey, it continues on just a little bit here. So she starts asking some other questions too, about Summerhall. He says, Summerhall is the place the prince loved best. He would go there from time to time with only his harp for company. Even the knights of the Kingsguard did not attend him there. He liked to sleep in the ruined hall beneath the moon and stars. And whenever he came back, he would bring a song. When you heard him play with his harp, with the silver strings and sing of twilights and tears and the death of kings, you could not feel but he was singing of himself and those he loved. What of the usurper? Did he play songs as well? Chuckled, Arson chuckles. Robert liked songs that made him laugh. The Bodler and the Bitter. He only sang when he was drunk, and then it was, like to be a cask of ale, 54 turns, or the Bear and the Maiden Fair. Robert was much, and then he gets cut off.
What do you think he was going to say?
Yeah, I don't know. That's one thing that's like that kind of stuck out to me this week in reading, is I was like, ooh, that's especially because we look at like the Bear, the Maiden Fair, deception and
Oh
all these
no.
things, you know,
And
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 I'm
Barristan's deceiving her right now because she doesn't know it's Barristan.
right. Yeah. And so was he about to say something like, I don't know that it would have really amounted to some huge mystery or something, but it is just, it's just one of those
Was he about to
anytime.
say Robert was more loved than your brother?
Yeah, maybe. But thankfully he gets cut off, and when one of the dragons lifted their head and roared, and then horses show up, and then it's Dario here to continue
These
the
darn
rest.
people always interrupting important conversations.
Mhm. Oh, but now my keyboard's dead here, so let me
Oh,
just.
you're good. You're good. Yeah, I don't know. I think that with this scene, one of the things we can take away, obviously, Jorah very concerned about Dario, saying, "Hey, these people are lying to you. There's bad actors everywhere." When we know that Jorah actually was a bad actor and has reformed himself, you got Barristan over here also lying about his identity. And it begins to paint a very weird picture for Daenerys as she's in a very formative years of who she can actually trust. And I think her relationship to men is most likely going to be a point in the future because almost every single man that she has dealt with has either been horrible to her or has lied to her. And even Khal Drogo, who she ended up, somewhat loving. I mean, to say that it was a problematic wedding would be to understate, how
Yeah,
uncomfortable book one
certainly.
is with their scenes. And I think that every relationship she has with the male character is kind of suspect or odd or not good. So it does make you wonder in the future if that will have something to do with her eventual hopeful ruling of Westeros or having to take someone's hand in Westeros as well. Obviously, she gets married in a Dance with Dragons, right? She has to kind of marry for duty and not love, and that's part of the whole theme of the book and the book series. But that's another dent in her relationship with males throughout the whole thing, and a lot of this has to center around the idea of power and patriarchy as well, especially when we get over to Westeros. So it's another angle to this to think about, not just like um, who Daenerys will end up with, but like how does she view romance in
Right.
males because of the terrible track record these men have with a 15-year-old girl. God,
Yeah,
Jorah sucks in the books, doesn't he? Like, I don't mean
I
sucks
know.
like I don't like reading about. I like his character. He's interesting, but like, what a scumbag.
It's weird. It's weird.
It's
Yeah.
very weird.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Hey, I have a Raven I want to pull up, which kind of talks about a little bit about this, and then the next week we're in an Arya chapter, so it kind of all is connected here. And
In 2 weeks, we're taking the holidays off, Matt.
yes, yeah, we're taking the holidays off. Because I'm actually we're gonna be we're doing a bunch of traveling and
I
stuff.
need to decompress. I need to
Jimmy needs a breather, and yeah, we just need. And honestly, I can tell you right now, our holiday numbers are always in the tank anyway, so not a lot of people listen. I may record like something for Patreon, something small, just to give for
Yeah, good
people as
idea.
well. Yeah, but yeah. So anyway, with that, this comes to us from Tanner, Tanner of House Lawless, longtime listener,
Mm-hmm.
who says, "Good morrow, my lord. 7 blessings to you. I have listened to this podcast since 2018, but I have never read the books. So I decided to start after season 2 of House of the Dragon,
Very
and
cool.
I finally caught up to you all." So he says, "I'm absolutely loving it. My favorite POV is Arya. I've always loved apocalyptic shows. The Last of Us,
Mm-hmm.
the movies like A Quiet Place, looting abandoned villages, sleeping in the woods, stretching resources thin. Arya's chapters definitely feel apocalyptic. Anyway, you guys recently discussed who knows about John's birth, like Benjen, Jamie, right?
Mm-hmm.
He says this a Game of Thrones Maester Aemon quote always stuck out to me. Tell me, John, if the day should ever come when your Lord Father must need choose between honor on one hand and those he loves on the other, what would he do? When I first read it, I wondered if Maester Aemon suspected that John was a Targaryen when he asked this question in order to gauge the possibility of it. What do you all think? Thanks as always for a fantastic show. Look forward to finishing the rest of the series with you."
So first off, Tanner, thank you. Also, I love post-apocalyptic stuff, and there's absolutely a ton of apocalyptic stuff in Game of Thrones. I mean, there's actually a ton of different genres within A Song of Ice and Fire,
Oh
and
yeah.
George is written in a ton of different genres. And I love hearing about someone jumping into the books because of the show or podcast, whatever. I'm just so happy to have more people reading George's writing because George is phenomenal. My actual mission statement is to get more people to read George's other books as well, because I think
Right.
Fever Dream is fantastic. Night Flyers, Dying of Light, and then also Sand Kings. And I've read a million of his other
The
short
Ice
stories.
Dragon.
Ice Dragon. Like George is just a talented author that's worked in the industry for a long time in different mediums. And I don't know. He's my favorite author. So when I hear somebody jumping in and having a great time, it honestly is the best feeling in the world. So Tanner, very cool that you decided to start reading. This is also one of the reasons why I really love George's writing, because Maester Aemon, knowing or not knowing, are equally compelling. Because if you think about it, in some ways, it's a misconnection for Aemon, who desperately wanted a connection with another Targaryen and hears about Daenerys and the dragons, and he wants that family, right? He wants that connection. He wants to know about his blood and to see it live on in many ways, right? Like he's having all these thoughts and feelings about Daenerys when in reality he talked to a Targaryen in book 1, which is tragic, which is
Mm-hmm.
very on par for George, but also it makes John's character even more interesting. However, if we look at it the other side and we say Aemon knew all along, makes Maester Aemon even cooler.
Yeah.
Maybe he's going to Daenerys to tell her about John, and he doesn't make it, obviously.
Yeah. But
Poor guy.
the cool thing about that is that if he is going to tell Daenerys and he is going to meet her, then Sam going to the Citadel and going
Right?
to fulfill and sort of finish Maester Aemon's quest
Oh,
makes it that much cooler too.
and then him becoming like, oh, dude,
I know.
like
It's so good.
George balances these things very well. And I've said this before. We talked about this with Tyrion's dreams, and I think something else we talked about maybe last episode or 2 episodes ago. George leaves doors open where
We
like,
talked about this last week because I just made a TikTok about it.
yeah, he keeps doors open. He wants to kind of see, like, maybe I'll come back to this later. Let's leave the possibility open that Tyrion is a time traveling feat, whatever. I'm obviously not that crazy, but like this is one of those things. Like, we don't have to have that answer for it to be really good in the story. But if he wanted to dig deeper and make it a big part of like Sam's arc and then Daenerys and John coming together, and then we think about Maester Aemon and that, like, he could do that. And that is one of the things that I think is the most compelling about the series. Also, one of the reasons why the series is very hard to write.
Yeah. Yeah,
Mhm.
I agree. Yeah, and I'm with you. I mean, it's one of the things, and this is might be. I mean, all one. I think there's a lot of reasons why George has, probably struggled in finishing in Winds of Winter. But
Mhm.
two, there's just so many paths that he could go, and that's what we love. That's what I love. That's why we do this, is because it's like to explore every path that he could go. Like, and sometimes those things aren't going to get explained, right?
Yeah,
Like I think to me, obviously there's a lot of characters still alive, and you could say, well, this path could go this way, this one could go this way. Maybe we'll see a Ghost of High Heart again. Maybe we'll see somebody else again. But I think, in other cases, the character to me that always stands out as the character of, well, there's a lot of mystery around this character, and this character is now dead, so we're probably never gonna know, is like Shay. Shay to me is that character that there's so like,
yeah.
was she hired from the get go? What is her backstory? Like, was
Did she
she
poison
actually
Tywin?
right? Did she poison Tywin? Was she actually like put there by Tywin to know Tyrion would mess up? Or did she actually just happen to be at that place at the right place? Well, unfortunately, sort of wrong place, wrong time, because it sent her down
Right.
this path. But you know what I mean? Like, right place, right time for all of these events to trigger. And so she is sort of one of those characters, and that may be the thing with Aemon, is we'll never know whether Aemon knew or not. He may have some idea because, we know. I mean, we don't. The tricky part about Maester Aemon, is he goes to the wall when Bloodraven goes.
Yeah.
So, we don't know of any sort of connections to Bloodraven or anything, or any real sort of connections to Rhaegar, or anything like that, and that's kind of the really tricky part.
Yeah.
If Dunk the Tall does become cold hands or himself goes to the wall after Summerhall or something, seeking refuge, and then ends up becoming cold hands after that. Maybe Aemon knows what happened at Summerhall. Like he knows
Yes.
because he talks about his brother Egg. That's one of
Yes.
the things.
And we also know that Dunk is supposedly dead at Summerhall. We are questioning when me and Matt say he's cold hands, we're questioning that narrative.
Right.
Because Cold Hands has these black hands that were frostbitten,
Right.
but maybe
Yeah,
they
Cold
were
Hands to me
burnt.
seems way more like Sir Duncan the Tall than perhaps
Benjen. Yeah.
Benjen. Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
for
Even
sure.
though the show obviously goes in that route.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's cool. Like, this is a new reader in 2024 coming to us with a question.
Even though
Just
he's
a
listened to the
question.
podcast for all the years.
Yeah, but
Right.
this is why it's so cool to see people, because like we've never asked that question.
Exactly.
And now we have. And now when I reread, I'm going to be thinking about that scene when I read. I'm like, well, what if this scene was written with the idea that Aemon actually did see? Like, that's
It changes.
awesome.
It changes the perspective.
It breathes life into the series, and that's why I always love seeing new people get into the series. It's awesome.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, guys. Well, hey, with that, like Jimmy said, we're going to take the holidays off. And we will, when we come back, it will be with chapter 43, which will be Arya 8. Now, as we've said, sometimes, and really nobody's ever really kind of done this, but I think it's just because I think actually we're, as weird as it seems, ahead of a lot of people. Because whenever people always send us messages and they're always like, well, hey, I'm catching up or I'm way back here. So if you are caught up and you read the chapter and you want to have your thought about what you thought while you read the chapter and have us incorporate it into the episode, then shoot us an email at btkcast or btkcast@gmail.com or bendthenepodcast.com.
Yeah, we always love to hear from different people, and we've had a very loyal and large listener base for a long time, and we know you have thoughts, so we'd like to hear more about them.
Absolutely. So anyway, guys, with that, as always, we want to thank you for playing the Game of Thrones. Our next episode will be a Storm of Swords, chapter 43, Arya 8.
And if you like our podcast, don't forget to subscribe, like us, write a review, leave a comment, or send us a raven at btkcast@gmail.com or bendthenepodcast.com.
We'll see you next time. And remember that winter is coming.
And happy holidays.